Hey there, it's Latina, your future-focused project manager, coming to you again this week with another topic of discussion. So let's get into this conversation. This particular conversation is about the idea stealers. Yeah, let's get into it. The information I'm going to be talking about today, as with other weeks, is coming from my book, Respectfully Unbothered. It is a workbook that teaches you how to deal with difficult coworkers, work in harmony with your coworkers, and stay sane. So you can see the QR code on the screen and the front copy of the book on the screen. So feel free to scan the QR code to learn more about the book, and hopefully you'll feel so inclined to pick it up. But what I'm doing over these weeks is really talking about just having the conversation with regards to these different dynamics within the workplace. And not a lot of them, all of them are things that I have experienced in the workplace, and I have an opinion about them. And I have some tips and pointers to discuss with regards to them. So that's why I'm here. So let's get into it. So this particular conversation about the whole idea stealer phenomenon is coming from chapter 5 of my book, Respectfully Unbothered. And also, I am going to be using some talking points that come from an article in Gallup.com that talks about employee recognition. So I do reference that source in some of the postings that you're going to see. At least one of the postings, I think the infographic has, I referenced that particular article, the name of the article in there. So if you're interested in going out to that source, you certainly can. And of course, if you're interested in going to learning more about the workbook chapter within my book, you can get the book. All right. So let's get into it. So the topics based on my bulleted talking points here, I'm going to talk about the engagement gap, why recognition and credit matter. I'm going to talk about decoding the idea stealer. And there's some tongue twisters in this conversation when I was looking over my notes. So I'm going to talk a little slower so I don't slur my words. But the other thing I'm going to talk about are some strategic tactics for visibility and protection. And then I'll get into discerning when to act, when to even go through the process of dealing with an idea stealer. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the engagement gap. So why recognition and credit matter. The biggest thing I want to mention, and I will probably mention this more than once, is that the whole idea of getting credit is not about ego. Sure, it makes you feel good when you've come up with an idea and that idea gets acknowledged and people give you credit for it. We're human, right? But it's not just about that. It's about showing your contribution within the workplace, which actually matters on a lot of other different levels, which we'll talk about. So, according to Gallup, the Gallup research and the source that I referenced, only 1 in 3 U.S. workers strongly agree that they receive praise for good work in the past week. Now, we all say, well, I don't need recognition. My work speaks for itself. Well, what if no one knows that that's your work, right? So it matters that we are acknowledged for the contributions that we make. And then the retention link, employees who do not feel adequately recognized are twice as likely to say they'll leave within the next year. All right. So if you're not being recognized, if you're seen, if you feel invisible, would you want to stay? I mean, think about a relationship. If your significant other never pays attention to you, would you stay? Probably not, at least not mentally. You may physically be in the space, but you may have quietly already left. And there is a lot of quiet quitting out there in the workforce. And some of it, not all of it, some of it has to do with the fact that people are just not being acknowledged for what they contribute. Impact on engagement. Recognition is a core part of workplace equity. Recognized employees are 4 times more likely to be engaged and 5 times more likely to feel connected to the company culture. So if I am being recognized, I feel connected, right? If I am being seen for what it is I say, then I feel connected. And I think also too, In those spaces too, a lot of times when if you are seen, a lot of times if there is a need to correct or redirect, or we're humans, we're not always right. A lot of times that correction or redirection is received a lot better if we are seen in the first place. Okay. If the only time I hear from my management or from my team is when something is wrong, then I'm going to feel some type of way about that, right? If the only time I am acknowledging my team as a project manager is when something goes wrong, that's a problem. I need to recognize when my team has great ideas and comes up with great ways. If we're in the middle of a risk that has realized itself, I need to be the one to be the example to acknowledge my team when we come out of that with a great idea. Okay. And the purpose of credit, giving credit is not about ego. It's about visibility, equity, and professional trajectory. So the credit, you getting the credit for your work, and I said this already before, I've already said it again, it's not about ego, nor should you position it like that. You shouldn't be like, oh, look at me. Um, but let me say this, those who feel for whatever reason, and we'll talk about some of the reasons, to steal your idea or take their idea as your own, that could be them an ego. And that's the problem. If you have the need for attention, and you feel the only way you can get it is by taking someone else's idea and thought, therein lies the issue. So, we're not trying to tell people what to do, but we as individuals, individual contributors, need to recognize when that's happening and decide whether or not we're going to take action. All right, so let's continue with the conversation. So decoding the idea stealer. So people typically steal ideas, or there are reasons why people steal ideas. There's a myriad of reasons, to be honest, but we'll call these the top three. We'll say three of them could be insecurity, fearing that others will outshine them, ambition. They want to climb the ladder faster, so they're grabbing, right? And that happens quite a bit. And then the other one could be blind spots. There's an unconscious absorbing of information without really thinking or realizing that it's not yours. Some people do have those blind spots, and being able to distinguish between the two is important. But whatever it is, whatever the reason is, again, you need to make a decision on whether or not you want to combat that, or come against that, or make that known. Okay. Some environments that are more prone, I think any environment is prone, to be honest with me. The article talks about some environments that are prone to idea stealing. I think any environment is prone to it. But hierarchical teams, competitive cultures can lead or be a good ground, if you will, for idea stealing. And remote settings. If you are a remote worker, sometimes you may feel less visible or may be less visible. Okay. So your ideas are not contributed to you. But again, those are all areas and things where if you choose to call that out, there's some techniques, and we'll talk about that. And I would really love to hear some of your techniques of how you may want to combat that, or that you consistently try. All right. Some common scenarios of idea stealing that we're all familiar with, just managers presenting someone's idea as fresh direction without acknowledgement. I have no problem with a manager at a meeting talking about an idea, but say my name. All right, say my name, say my name. If that idea was in fact from something that, was an idea that I contributed. That's only right, that's only fair. And again, it contributes to the cohesion of a team. People who repackage someone's ideas in a larger media, that's right up there with the manager, presenting something as a fresh idea. And that subtle we language. Well, we came up with this. And if the we that came up with this includes just your idea, then it's not a we, it's a me. Okay. Again, not about ego. It's just about giving credit, right? Giving credit. That's what we're talking about. And again, there are ways and there are reasons why that you want to do that. So while I've given you the scenarios, let's talk about some tactics for visibility and protection. One of them is a simple paper trail. Okay. Documentation is the first line of defense. All right. So so there are send follow-up emails to recap ideas shared in meetings like that. So for example, let me give you a tangible example. So you might have someone that recaps the meeting and sends an email. This was a great meeting. This is what we talked about. You can also add to that, say, yes, this was a great meeting. I'm really excited to see how the idea that I talked about with the team regarding ... is going to be utilized. Again, that kind of solidifies or memorializes or documents your contribution and that you are looking forward to that contribution being realized as we move forward in the team. Strategic visibility, speak up early in group settings to anchor the idea to your voice. Speak up early. I think that's the key. It's kind of like, to give an example, it's kind of like when two people meet for the first time and they say their name to you and you grasp their name, right? You've got probably, after that first meeting, you probably have 1 to 3 is pushing it, chances of not remembering that person's name if you start to see them on a regular. If you never grasp their name early and it's 3 weeks later and you still don't know their name, that's a problem, right? So I made that example to talk about the whole idea of speaking up early. When you are in these environments where you're in meetings or in emails, speak up early that it's your idea. Don't let it just fall to the ground as an idea. It's yours. Again, an example, you're in a meeting and you're maybe the week prior and you put an idea out there and say, oh, that's really cool. Let's massage that and see how that works. Fast forward to the next meeting, that idea gets talked about by somebody else and said, oh, that's really great. I'm so glad that you were able to use that idea that I came up with in the last week's meeting that we talked about. Again, it's subtle. It's not, and it may be something, again, you may want to practice because it's subtlety that says, this was my contribution and I am glad that we are moving forward with it. Okay. Again, use I statements when appropriate. I developed this concept based on, when you're presenting your idea, use the I statement. Contributed to you. It's your idea. And then publicly share ideas via collaborative tools. Like if you're on Slack or on Teams, share documents. Say, hey, this is an idea that I was thinking of that I thought we could use. Let me know your thoughts. Again, I'm putting emphasis on the I, but again, it's not, I'm putting emphasis on it in my verbal conversation with you, but in typing it out, you say, oh, this is an idea that I came up with that I'd like to know your thoughts about. Again, you solidified it there and you're keeping the paper trail of the fact that it was an idea that you came up with. And if it becomes, and here's where you decide to whether or not you're going to fight the battle. You may need to do a private call out. If there are repeat offenders, privately and professionally, you might want to call that out and say, I noticed some points in your presentation mirrored work that I shared earlier. In the future, I'd appreciate a shout out when my work is used. Okay. Now, again, that may sound forward. That may sound, a little, I don't know, abrasive. I don't know how it sounds to you. But again, if it's a repeated thing, it's worthy of a call out. And then enlisting allies. Okay. Develop allies within your place of work. Using mentors or a supportive colleague as a sponsor to reinforce your ownership. So, like, for example, if I am an ally or a sponsor or a friend to somebody, and I hear somebody give an idea that was somebody else's, I may say, oh, that's really cool. John, didn't we talk about that? Didn't you bring that up in the last meeting as an idea? Wasn't that something that you came up with? Again, subtle, something you can say, and then you can continue the conversation. Yeah, that sounds really good. I think we should go with that idea. I think we should play it out and see how that works. So be supportive. And then another thing too is that was an example of kind of my next point in terms of, if you want someone to contribute or attribute rather an idea to you, you start attributing ideas to others. give it back as an example. Particularly if you've got a repeat offender that's doing it to you, maybe one of the first steps before you do that call out is to start noticing when other people have ideas and you call out, oh, that's a great idea you came up with. I love the fact that we were able to put that in place. That has worked out so well. Maybe in a retrospective, or maybe in a weekly review meeting or a daily scrum, you get to say, that idea that Felicia came up with, that has worked out so well for me. I appreciate you coming up with that. You start doing it, right? And so when you need to call out at some point somebody else, you've already exhibited that behavior. So it's not like you are not giving what it is you are asking for. It's a give and take. All right. So that I think that's important. And that, again, that whole discerning when to act. Not every instance is worth confrontation. Okay. You should ask yourself, is it a one-time thing? Is it a pattern? And whether it's one or the other, is addressing it worth it? Okay. I do have a personal story that I'll probably share later on this week. It's too long for this particular scenario of that happening to me and what my choice was, because it's going to happen. But you have to decide whether or not it's worth you fighting that battle. And this all kind of culminates into the title of my book. It's a respectfully unbothered mindset. Sometimes the most powerful move is trusting that your brilliance is undeniable and moving your energy away from people who decide to appropriate that. I am who I am. I do what I do. If you want to, steal that idea, okay, have at it. I got more brilliance over here that, I'm going to go ahead and work out. I'm going to continue to work my magic. All right. So again, I am really curious to know what are some tactics of what you would use to make sure that your ideas are attributed to you. Tell me about a time that you have actually given a shout out to someone who had a great idea. What did you say? How did you position it? Because I think that's helpful to people who might feel a little introverted, maybe shy about speaking up, but speaking up is important because think about it. Speaking up, not only, this is my last point, speaking up is not only good for you in terms of getting credit where credit is due at the time, but it also is going to be what is helpful when it's review time, when it's evaluation time. If you have a 6-month or yearly evaluation and you want to have record of all of the things that you've contributed and how those contributions have moved the needle forward, then you have receipts at this point. You have receipts about what you've done and how you've contributed, and you have real receipts because you've spoken up in meetings. You're consistent with that. And you not only speak up in meetings for you, you also speak up in meetings for others. People see that. So when you go into a meeting and you talk about what you've contributed over the year, it's real tangible data, and it's real and tangible coming from you, and it's real and tangible because it's documented and you can show that documentation. All right, so with that said, I hope this was helpful. This is Latina Lewis, your Future Focus Project Manager, signing off. Check me out in the internet streets. Let's engage on this conversation, and I will see you in these internet streets.